Welcome to another video by WA Courses. In this Excel tutorial, we're going to take a look at the print options that we have in Excel. Especially some of the tips and tricks that you'll need to be able to print effectively. The tools that we can use for our print settings are in various places. Some of them are in the File tab, Print, and here are our print options. Now, this gives me a preview of my spreadsheet and what it will look like in print. I can either use the scroll bar to scroll down and see the pages, or you can see down here, it gives you the number of pages and what page number you are on. So this is page 8 out of 45. I can move through the pages with the arrows. Now let's take a look at some of the print settings over here. The first thing that I could change is my orientation. Right now, we have a portrait orientation. We could choose landscape orientation. So let's go back to page 1, which allows more columns on each page. And you see now how the number of pages went from 45 to 42 immediately. So the landscape orientation will need fewer pages in order to be printed. Another thing we can look at are the margins. Right now we have normal margins. We could choose narrow margins and take advantage of more space on the page. So you see that this print setup is quite important, so especially in Excel. So take a look at this before you just press on the print button. Now let's go back and take a look at some other tools. We can find some print options in the Page Layout tab. So we could choose our margins before going to print, narrow. We could also switch orientation from here, portrait or landscape. We could choose the page size, but our page size is usually this size. Another thing we could do is choose to print an area. So you could only select one area of the sheet you'd like to print. For example, if I only wanted to print the 4 first columns, I could select them and set this as a print area. A very important tool here in the page setup group is the print titles. Now, what exactly is this? If I would like my titles to be printed on every page of the spreadsheet, I would select them and choose Print Titles. And this window pops up. Print Titles, rows to repeat at the top. Yes. I do not want columns to repeat, I want rows to repeat. Row 1, which contains my titles. So let's click on the arrow here. Rows to repeat at top, this row. Enter. There it is. It will repeat my first row on every page. Let's click now on Print Preview and take a look at what this will look like. Okay, so my first page has the titles anyway. Let's look at our second page. Well, they're still on the second page. And page 3, 4, 5. So this could be very useful for very large spreadsheets. You have the titles on every single page. Let's go back. Now, another thing I could do before printing is narrow down my columns. We have already talked about how we can do that in a previous tutorial. We could go in between the columns, double click, and now the width adjusts to my data. So I could do that for all the columns. And this narrows down the width of my columns. I could even try to shorten down large names. For example, here, manufacturing price is quite large and takes up a lot of space, whereas my data is not that large. So let's shorten the name. Okay, and now adjust the column size, the column width to be specific. So that takes up a lot of less space. And discount band is also quite large, so let's shorten that. Okay, and adjust column width. So always before you start printing a very large spreadsheet, make sure you make some adjustments so that your print will take up fewer pages. Let's also shorten this. Month. Okay, and adjust the width. So it appears as if my spreadsheet will now take up less pages when printed. Another thing very useful in Excel are these 3 buttons down here. Let's click on Page Break Preview. This gives us a preview of what my printed pages will look like. So I have a preview of each page here. The page layout gives me this layout. Now, in the page layout right here, I could choose to add a header on each page. For example, let's add the header Sales. You see now that I have the same header on every page. Sales, sales. And on the next page, sales, sales. I could also add a footer, which will appear on every single page at the bottom. So now let's go back to our print preview. So we have 44 pages. We have our header, sales, and our title on page 1. Let's take a look at page 2. Again, sales, our header, and title. The same on all the pages. So it's always a good idea to take a look at the print settings before you start printing. They will come in handy after, as they can give you titles and headers on every single page, and also take up fewer pages to print very large spreadsheets on. That was the end of this tutorial. Thank you for watching.